Hey there, I'm Amy Nielsen from Big Abilities and Collaborative Corner for Exceptional Children. Today I'm going to be sharing with you something called the Big Red Safety Box and talking with you about eloping and wandering and the dangers that can be for children on the autism spectrum. So let's get started. So before we get into what the Big Red Safety Box is, I want to share with you some statistics from the document that comes along with the Big Red Safety Box about autism and eloping and wandering. And the statistics are pretty alarming. So according to their document, and this is information they've collected from the CDC, 49% of children with autism engage in wandering behaviors. So that's at least half of children with autism will engage in some type of wandering or eloping behavior. And what that actually means, kind of the way I explain that to people, is wandering or eloping is when the child leaves a place that they are safe and supervised and they go into an area that is unsafe and unsupervised. So that's kind of a way to think about that. 35% of children with autism attempt to wander at least once per week. That is a pretty scary statistic. More than 1/3 of children with autism who wander are never or rarely able to communicate their name, their address, or their phone number. So a lot of our kiddos on the spectrum are nonverbal, and even our verbal children, often when they're asked those questions, they can't deliver that information. 29% of wandering happens from school or a classroom. Accidental drowning accounts for approximately 90% of fatalities related to wandering. And 42% of autism-related wandering cases involved a child 9 or younger and have ended in a fatality. These statistics are scary, and we need to be aware of them because a lot of wandering and eloping can be prevented. There are safety measures that we can put in place to keep our children safe. So if you're a parent or a grandparent or a teacher, anywhere that child is, this information needs to be in the hands of those caregivers so they are aware of it. So let's go through what is inside the box, and then I'm going to go in detail in what is inside this manual because it is invaluable. So here is the Big Red Safety Box. It is from the National Autism Association, and I'll put a link to their website below. The box is free and all the contents are free. You can pay an $8 donation for shipping. If you can afford to do that, please do so because they do send these out to families for free. So let's see what is inside. First off, we have some battery operated door alarms, and the batteries are included with these. If you have a child on the autism spectrum, you probably already have some sort of alarms or locks. And what I recommend to parents is that you think about the protection of your child in layers. And the first layer is the parent's eyes. You should always have an adult's eyes on your child. My husband and I, even if one of us leaves the room to go to the restroom, will say, "I'm going to the restroom, you got your eyes on him," because it is that important. My son is 5 years old and he is on the autism spectrum and he is prone to wandering. So this is that layer of protection that I'm talking about. So the first layer is the parent's eyes. The second layer can either be one of two things: alarms, and we have an alarm system already installed in our home, so we haven't needed to use these. Anytime a door opens, we hear a chime. So that's one layer. And then a third layer is we have locks that are really high up that he can't reach and he can't unlock. There is a company local to my community called Child Senior Safety, and I'm in the Central Florida area. They come to your home, they will give you a free estimate and free consult and go through all the areas of your home and point out which areas maybe you want to add some protection to, such as bolting furniture to the walls and adding those locks up high that your child can't reach, or if they can reach them, there are locks that they are not able to unlock. So again, think about those layers of protection in your home and in any home that your child visits. So that's one of the items. Another item is an I Have Autism Alert bracelet. Sometimes I feel like when I'm out in public with my son, which isn't often anymore in the middle of this pandemic, I want a big sign that says, "My child has autism." So anytime he engages in some sort of a behavior that may look odd or atypical, they will understand why. Not that it really matters, but some kids may wear this, and this would be good if they're going to school. Maybe they're going to a music class or whatever. Again, I'm recording this in July of 2020, and who knows what school is going to look like in the future. But this would let people know that are going to be interacting with that child that they have autism, and so that they need to be a little extra careful in keeping them safe. These are stickers that you could put on windows of your car in case you're in an accident. So any first responders would know that that child may have difficulty with communication. And another thing in the box is tons of stop signs. These are great to put on things like the refrigerator or the oven, places that you don't want your child to get into, because a lot of our kids don't recognize the signs of danger. They don't understand there can be a consequence for, injuring yourself. They just don't have those concepts sometimes. So using things like an easily recognizable visual can at least give them caution, like, I better not, open the fridge, or I better not open the oven without talking to mom. So kind of teaching them, there's a ton of these in here, teaching them that stop means no, or as my son says, X means no. That's what he uses. Also inside the box is a couple of coupons. This is for a free wrist ID or stretch shoe ID. Again, if our kiddos get lost or they wonder, a lot of them can't give that basic information to someone that finds them and how to get them reconnected with their family. So this is a great idea. And this is a child ID kit. This is where you would go ahead and fill out all of their personal identification information, including their fingerprints, because in the event that we have a child that does wonder, sometimes thinking about this information is really tough, and to be able to hand this right to a first responder or a police officer so they could immediately begin searching for your child. Seconds can be very important when it comes to a child going missing. So those are most of the items in the box. The other item is their guide, and this has a ton of important information. I'm going to kind of walk through some of the things that are in here, and because I think it's really important. So there are some statistics about autism and wondering on the first page. There are some more stop signs. There is a caregiver checklist that kind of would give anybody working with your child an idea of the things they need to be looking for. So if your child is going to visit grandma, send a copy of this with them so grandma knows. Things such as, I've alerted my local first responders about my child. Do the first responders in your area know there is a child on the spectrum? That is important information for them to know. In some communities, you can actually even request a sign that goes in your community to alert people of that. So in my community, I've told people, if you see my child wondering, please contact me, because he will never be left alone. So if he's outside alone, there is a problem. So all of my neighbors know that. So it's important to let your community know. This is an example of scenarios that a child would wonder. They don't do this out of malice. I'm going to sneak off to see if I can hide from mom. Often it's just very innocent reasons. And I can give you a personal example from my own family. We were in the backyard with my son, and we have a fenced-in backyard, and he was playing on his playground, and I popped in to grab his juice or something. And I hardly had my eyes off of him. He sees through our neighbor's window. They have a Thomas the Train in the window, and he can see it. And when I walk back outside, he is trying to wedge himself through the fence, and he's like, I need to get cranky. And he's like, Mom, I need a key, because there was a door next to the window. So he got fixated on this Thomas the Train cranky character that he saw, and he was just going to try to go over there and get it. And had I not been right there, he probably would have wiggled his way through the fence or over it and attempted to find a way in that house. And for days, he remained fixated on that cranky and would stand at the window and look for it and want it and ask me for a key. And finally, I had to message my neighbor and say, do you please mind moving cranky where my son can't see him, because he's just so fixated on that. Another story that a friend of mine told was that his older son, who is on the autism spectrum, I think he's like 18 or 19 years old, he loves doing the recycling for the family. So each week he goes around the house and collects everyone's recycling and takes it out to the curb. And he hasn't really been prone to wandering until this day. So it seems like it's a little bit longer than it should normally take him for him to return from the recycling. So the dad looks outside and he doesn't see him. The recycling's by the curb and he doesn't see his son. And he says, he looks down the road and there he is collecting all the neighbors' recycling. And even though thankfully everything turned out okay, that could have been a tragic outcome had he been hit by a car or gotten lost and not be able to find his way back home. So think about potential scenarios like that with your own child where they become fixated on something or they innocently, or see something. I tell people if my son saw a fire truck, he'd be gone, just because whatever they're really interested in can be a trigger for that. Or sometimes if they're trying to avoid something can also be a trigger. So this tells you a little bit about those types of scenarios. And here is an outline for a social story that you can create to teach your child to stay in their home. Actually, the title is called Staying in My Home. Our children often need to be taught through direct instruction things that, for most kids come easy, like staying safe. I wish I would have had this a couple of months ago when we were going through my son's IEP meeting. This is a sample wandering prevention IEP letter. Wandering needs to be in your child's IEP. It is important that teachers have things in place to prevent that from happening. My child can't be the child that goes with another peer to take the lunch money up to the office. It just is not a possibility. And so I needed to make sure that was in my son's IEP over and over again, that he is prone to eloping or wandering. And we've never had a big scare, and that's because we have been so diligent in keeping him safe from the beginning. This is about tracking technology, and there are a lot of different options out there for geo-trackers. So everyone's going to have a different characteristics and services that the companies provide. Some of them are wristbands that look like watches, some of them attached to their clothing or to their shoes. So do some research on different types of tracking technology if that's a route you think you want to go down. And so this talks to you about the different options in the different types of tracking systems that are available. This is an awareness letter. Again, you could send to family and friends and teachers about the risks of eloping. This is about swimming lessons. Children on the spectrum tend to be very attracted to water, and 90% of fatalities that are the outcomes of wandering are accidental drowning. So it is really important to teach our kiddos to swim. And it's hard because I kind of jokingly tell everyone that my son got fired by 3 different swim instructors before we finally taught him to swim. And it was because none of these swim instructors, they were great, wonderful swim instructors. They just didn't know how to get the messages across to him, what they were trying to get him to do, because they weren't, specifically autism related swim instructors. So look for someone like that in your area, maybe an RBT, a registered behavior technician that also teaches swim. It is important. Thankfully, my son just learned this summer, and what a sigh of relief. And not that, again, remember, your first line of defense in keeping your child safe is the watchful eyes of a caregiver, but it's those layers of protection that we also put in place after that. Swim lessons are very, very, very important. This page is about 5 affordable safety tools. So let's say it's not within your family budget to install a whole house security system. There are things that you can do, such as these inexpensive door alarms, these stop signs, shoe ID tags, temporary tattoos of your child's address if you're going to be going somewhere, such as a theme park at some point in the future. Those are things that can be inexpensive and very important. And with our child, we haven't been to a theme park since March, but when we did go, he was either in the stroller or I tether him to me. And at first, I felt a little self-conscious about doing that. I didn't want to be that parent with my child on a leash. However, it was his pediatrician that gave me the suggestion to do that. She said, give him some freedom, let him walk, and be able to keep him safe at the same time. So there are some inexpensive things that you can do to keep your child safe. This is a family wandering emergency plan. Just like Most families have a fire emergency plan, like, we're all going to meet at the mailbox if we have a house fire. It is important to have plans in place. Who's going to go looking for the child? Who's going to stay home in case they return? Who are you going to call? Thinking about having that plan in place way before there's ever an emergency is a very important part in being proactive about it. And here is an autism elopement form that, again, you can fill out, and this is specifically for first responders as well, because in the middle of a crisis, it's going to be really difficult to think about where are the places that my child might go, where are the things that they're interested in. Like right now, if my son went missing, I'd probably go to that neighbor's house and see if he was trying to get in there to get cranky. So think about those things ahead of time. This is a special needs profile for educators, and a lot of our kids will be going back to school this fall. Some of them will be distance learning. If your child is going back to school, please send something like this with them so your child's teacher knows your child's specific needs. I really like these cards that come inside the book. They're teaching emotions, and this is also an area where our kids can struggle, is understanding emotions. We work diligently with our son in teaching him emotions. Happy, everything's okay, unworried, and these are some suggestions that you could try with your child. Sad and angry. Very simple emotions, very simple emojis for those emotions, and sometimes understanding those emotions can help prevent a wondering scenario if they are trying to wonder because they want to avoid something. And lastly, when I first got this and I opened it up and I say, there's my friend Rob Gorski. That's the Autism Dad. He's a friend of mine. And I'm going to link an episode in the show notes that he did when he interviewed someone from Angel Sense, which is a geo-tracking device, and they talk a lot more about eloping. So that's another resource. So shout out to Mr. Rob Gorski, the Autism Dad. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Some resources that you can get at little to no cost to your family to keep your child safe. And I hope this information was valuable to you. If you have any more questions about eloping or wondering, please reach out to me at www.bigabilities.com. Thank you. Have a safe and wonderful rest of your day.